So thank you for that introduction. Like said, I'm Yannick Reekmans. I'm from Belgium, so good afternoon from my part of the world. Not sure where everybody else is attending from. And like said, I'm a Microsoft 365 solution architect. I work mainly with Teams and SharePoint. And that's also my category for my MVP award. So I'm an Office Development MVP, and I do mostly development in SharePoint and Teams. My contact details are on the slide, so feel free to reach out. I am active on Twitter. You can find me there. There's a link to my blog as well, and from there on, you can click through to my LinkedIn and just connect to send me questions, and I'll try and answer them as soon as possible. Now, I'm also a father of two little children, and they're at home now because it's Wednesday afternoon and school's out in Belgium. So if you hear them in the background, I do apologize up front because they can be quite noisy. So let's get started in my session. When I initially sent in the proposal for the session, I named it Project Oakdale or Real Development, what to pick for your next Microsoft Teams customization. Now, initially, I picked even another title, but Microsoft keeps renaming everything. So I decided to rename my session as well while preparing it. So it's now called Custom Development or the Power Platform, what to pick for your next Microsoft Teams customization. Don't worry, I'll still cover Project Oakdale, but I take this session a little bit more broad than just custom development versus Project Oakdale, because the Power Platform itself also has some stuff that I want to cover. So this is the agenda of today. We'll start with the introduction, which I'm currently doing. And then there's the Microsoft Teams as a platform and what is Project Oakdale. So we'll look at what Teams can do for an extensibility model, and then get a brief introduction in what is Project Oakdale. And then we dive into the bulk of this session, or why you're here. That's where we compare the custom development options of Microsoft Teams extensibility with everything that's possible in the Power Platform, including with Project Oakdale. And at the end, we do a small wrap-up. Don't forget and stay to the end, because some of you might have seen it on Twitter already. At the end, I'll be giving away sticker packages from Print Your Own Device. So stick around until the end. You get a link where you can answer, I think, 5 questions and get a chance or enter the raffle and get a chance in one of the sticker packages I'm giving away. So let's go with Microsoft Teams as a platform. Microsoft Teams as a platform consists of 4 broad topics. So Teams as a platform is all about the extensibility with and for Microsoft Teams. And the 4 categories are from the bottom of the screen, full code custom solutions, where you build everything yourself, which is the most complex option, and it requires some development skills to get everything done. You can also go one level higher and use one of the reference solutions that Microsoft and the community made available. These reference solutions are out-of-the-box open source solutions that come with the source code, and they're on GitHub, and they support a complete business scenario. So you can either use them out of the box and just install them in your environment, or you can use them as an example of what you can build and how you can achieve some of the functionality in there as well. Or you can use them as a baseline and extend it so that it keeps 90% of the functionality and you add the 10% that you're missing. And then a little bit more higher in the stack, there's the low-code apps and workflows. So this is where the Power Platform comes in, and you use Power Apps, Power Automate, Power Virtual Agents, and Power BI to achieve business scenarios and unlock critical insights into your data. So this requires less coding skills than the full code custom solutions, much less. The reference solutions itself, they require a little bit coding experience because you might need to install some Azure environment. Now, the highest level of applications that are available in Microsoft Teams are those that are already made. So that's where Microsoft and partners put applications inside the Microsoft Teams store. So it's just you go into the Microsoft Teams store in the app section of your Teams client, and everything that's listed there is ready-made. You get some customization options, well, mostly configuration options, but most of them are ready to use out of the box, and there's nothing much more for you to do. You just go into the store, you click add, and you add additional functionality to your Teams client. So from bottom to top, it requires less and less coding skills. Now, while that's interesting, let's go see which extensibility points there are in Microsoft Teams. So if you want to bring your own app or your own service inside Microsoft Teams client, you have the ability to expose it in an interface. So your application needs an interface, and that interface is either a tab, a bot, an adaptive card, a messaging extension, a task module, or notifications. And then, of course, your application is not just front end, but it also requires a backend, and we see most commonly used resources in Azure, and then the Microsoft Graph to fetch data out of your Microsoft 365 environment, SharePoint for some data storage, and Power Apps Flow for the low-code interfacing inside Teams itself. Now, recently announced, Ignite is also the surfaces where your application can live inside the Teams client. So we already had a group, team, and personal scope. So a tab, for example, can be a tab in Teams, but also a personal application that's just for one specific user, or a tab that exists in a group chat. Announced at Ignite is the ability to extend meetings itself. So while you're in a meeting, you can also have custom development or custom applications show up inside that meeting, either before the meeting in preparation, when you schedule your meeting, you can configure an application up front, and it's also available at the end of a meeting or after the meeting. And during the meeting, you can have a side pane showing up, much like the chat window or the participant pane that exists in this chat as well, or this meeting as well, and a pop-up window, so a task module pop-up interaction window that can show over the content. Now, that's recently announced, and we'll look at how this has an impact on the extensibility possibilities with custom development and the Power Platform. Looking at Project Oakdale, because I promised to get you an overview of what is Project Oakdale. Now, Project Oakdale was born as CDS Lite, which was the internal name. It got renamed to, or announced as, Microsoft DataFlex, and then something happened, and it's now, well, it wasn't clear, so it became Microsoft DataFlex for Teams, and then something else happened, and now it's called Project Oakdale. So Project Oakdale, it's the internal name. We're supposed to get a good name or a marketing name for this, but it hasn't been figured out, I guess. So currently, it's still known as Project Oakdale. And what is it, Project Oakdale? This is their definition. So in essence, it's a low-code data platform that exists inside Microsoft Teams. And you can use it to build apps, bots, and flows while being in the Teams client, using the functionality that you already know from the Power Platform, specifically Power Apps, Power Virtual Agents, and Power Automate. Now, to Project Oakdale is the fact that it is built on the Common Data Service. So if you have a premium license for Power Apps already, you know that you can use a Common Data Service. The Common Data Service is a data store where you can put in tables and entities and records. So you can store information there, so you don't have to use an external database or, God forbid, SharePoint lists to store all your data. Now, when you go full Power Apps, you need a premium license to use the Common Data Service. With Project Oakdale, you get the Common Data Service included in the license. We'll talk more about licenses later because it's a complex topic, but important to remember is that the Common Data Service is included with Project Oakdale environments. And Project Oakdale therefore provides relational data storage, data types and governance, and solution deployment to the Teams App Store, all built in from this Project Oakdale application and Project Oakdale environment that's inside the Teams client. So how does that look? I've got a screenshot of Project Oakdale in Teams. So it's an application that exists in the Teams App Store. You can already go find it now in the Teams App Store. It's called Power Apps. So it's not called Project Oakdale. That's important to know because otherwise you will not find it. There's nothing mentioning Project Oakdale in the Teams App Store. So you go look for the Power Apps application, and then you can start creating an application. It just in this application or in this Power Apps application, you create your custom built Power App. The same goes for Power Virtual Agents. Power Virtual Agents also has an application inside the Teams Store that you can use to build bots with Power Virtual Agents from the Teams client. Now, looking at how this goes in practice, it's like Project Oakdale Practical. Every team, which is also an Office 365 group, can get their own Project Oakdale environment. That Project Oakdale environment contains the data, the applications, the flows, and the bots that are accessible by that specific team or that Office 365 group. It's important to note that this Project Oakdale environment is only accessible through Microsoft Teams. Okay, something went wrong with my slides. So it's only accessible by Microsoft. I see a raised hand.
Yeah, just one thing. Can you just a little bit provide a clarity here? When you create a Teams, that's when it creates an environment, or?
Well, no, it does not. So when you go into the Teams app and you have your Teams application available and you have your specific team available, then you open up the Power Apps application inside Teams. When you create an application here, and I'll show you in a demo later, when you create an application here, you select the team to which this application should be associated. The first time that you do it, and the first time that you select that specific team, it will also create the Project Oakdale environment. So if you start in Power Apps or in Power Virtual Agents, and you select the specific team and it does not have an environment available, that's when that environment will be created.
All right, thank you.
So this environment gets created, and for those people that have already had access to the Power Platform Admin Center and looked at it, there used to be all of your environments that are in there. They're still there, but they started as showing up as a type production or sandbox. Now with Project Oakdale, you might see environments showing up that are called that are of a type Microsoft Teams. So those are the specific Project Oakdale environments. You see, Microsoft is avoiding everywhere to call this thing by its name because they don't have a name yet. So this thing is now called Microsoft Teams, or the environment is called Microsoft Teams. The app in Teams is called Power Apps. So they're making it quite confusing. Now, the Project Oakdale environment contains, like I said, data, apps, flows, and bots. And it's only accessible through Microsoft Teams. So you can only use all of these applications, this data, or these Power Automate flows, or even the Power Virtual Agents bots, Microsoft Teams client, either the desktop client, the web client, or the mobile client. There is no way to interact with these applications outside of the Teams environment or the Teams client. That also means that, or it's also good to note that an application or a bot is associated to one specific team. It cannot be moved from one team to another, or not easily moved from one team or another to another, because it's associated to that specific team's environment and thus that specific Project Oakdale database, and that Project Oakdale database is based on or is a license of the Common Data Service. Now, good to know about Project Oakdale is that it's currently in public preview. So it's not GA yet. It has been announced at Ignite, but it's in public preview. So you can start using it already now if you want. Just add the Power Apps application or the Power Virtual Agents application to your Teams client and follow the steps, and you can start creating an application inside Teams. Project Oakdale has a limit or has multiple limits associated to it. Every Project Oakdale environment has a maximum capacity of 2 gigabytes. So your Project Oakdale environment, which is a limited CDS environment, can only have 2 gigabytes of data. Project Oakdale can only contain 1 million rows, and it can only be used in, or there can only be 500 Project Oakdale environments inside your organization. And that's important to note because 500 Project Oakdale environments, it's much, much less than the maximum allowed number of teams you can have in your environment. So when number 501 tries to create a Project Oakdale environment, it will like error out, you will get an exception, and you cannot create additional environments in Oakdale. Also important to note is, or there are two things that are important here, is the fact that a Project Oakdale environment can only be deleted at the moment when you delete the Teams team. So you cannot delete a Project Oakdale environment separate from the Microsoft Teams team. So if you need to make room for another environment, you have to remove the complete team and not just the environment. Also, all of the limits state that you can have 500 environments, but it's also associated to your licensing. So like I said, we will cover licensing later, but you get 5 in each tenant by default, and then 1 additional Project Oakdale environment for each 20 eligible licenses that you've got. So you need 20 licenses in your organization that allow the usage of Project Oakdale to create an additional Project Oakdale environment. Looking at the App Studio that's used to build Power Apps and Power Virtual Agents inside Teams or at make.powerapps.com, they're a little bit different. So the one that you get in Teams is a little bit tweaked to the Teams environment with some specifics for Teams, but also some things are made simpler than what's available on the make.powerapps.com studio. So for those that have experience with the existing App Studio, you might need to adapt a little bit or change a little bit before you can use the App Studio inside Teams. You cannot have any API access, and there aren't any pro dev options when using Project Oakdale. So the Common Data Service has APIs, so you can even access the Common Data Service data in a C# application, for example, because you can reach out to the Common Data Service with an API and read all the data that's available. But that's not available for Project Oakdale environments. So there's no API access to the underlying CDS database, and there's no pro dev experience. So it does not allow, for example, custom Power Apps component, framework components, and things like that. Also with Project Oakdale, you cannot use any premium connectors. Premium connectors by default are not allowed in Project Oakdale, with a notable exception of the Azure API Management connector, because that one has also been announced at Ignite, will be free for applications or Power Apps and Power Automate flows that run inside Microsoft Teams. So if your Power Apps, and that's not just Project Oakdale apps, but also standalone Power Apps that are embedded into Microsoft Teams, they can use the Azure API Management connector for free inside of those applications. And then also good to know, there will be an upgrade path. If you start with Project Oakdale and with the Project Oakdale environment, you're supposed to be able to upgrade or promote that environment to a common data service environment, and then further on to a Dynamics 365 environment. Now, there are some asterisks next to it. Is currently, while in public preview, you cannot upgrade your Project Oakdale environment to a common data service environment. It's not available during the preview. And the documentation states that they hopefully will have it available by the time that this thing goes general available. And then there's the ability to upgrade a common data service environment to a Dynamics 365 environment. Well, I put there promises because this has been promised for years already, or at least as long as we know about CDS, that you could start with a CDS environment and get it upgraded to a Dynamics 365 environment. But until this date, nothing has been made available in that case. They do promise that they're still working on it. But let's compare the custom development approach with the Project Oakdale approach and the standalone Power Platform approach. First of all, working with the Teams context. So if we look at the Teams context, or if you look at developing an application that will live inside Microsoft Teams, most probably you will want to have some interaction with the Teams client as well. You will want to know in which team or in which channel this application is running, who are the members of that specific team, so your application can be tailored for the place where it is running. Now, if we look at custom development, there's the Microsoft Teams JavaScript SDK for tabs, and it has about 40 properties available to get context information. And there's the Project Oakdale Power Apps. They have a Teams integrated or integration object, which only has about 5 properties available. And then you have the embedded Power Apps, which use a query string parameter approach, which delivers about 11 properties. So if we look at this in practice, if we first look at the custom development, so the Microsoft Teams JavaScript SDK on this URL has all of the data or all of the context properties that are available. So you can get the channel ID and the channel name, the channel type, the entity ID, the group ID, and a whole lot of more information. Now, looking at the Project Oakdale Power Apps, they get a specific Teams integration object. If you look at what's available, I hate the UI here because there's no way of seeing everything that's available in this object except for typing it in here and then do a dot. And then you see the list of all the properties that are available. So you can get the context entity ID, whether or not your application is running in full screen mode, and which is the theme of your Teams client. So if it's either in dark mode or in light mode or in the high contrast theming. And then you've got some context information about this channel and this theme. So if you look at this channel, you can get the display name, the ID, and the kind of this channel. The display name is normal, it's the name of the channel, and the ID is the underlying identity for this channel. The kind is if it's either a private or a public channel. Now, looking at the theme context, you get the display name, the group ID that's backing it, and the ID of the theme itself. So you can see that there is a lot less information available on the context object in Project Oakdale Power Apps, as opposed to what's available in the Teams JavaScript SDK. Now, given this information that's available on the Teams context object or integration object, you will probably have enough to call out to the graph to get all of the information. No problem. You cannot just call out to the graph because it's an HTTP connector. and HTTP connector is a premium connector, and that's not available in Project Oakdale. So that might be challenging to get additional information about a team's theme in a Project Oakdale Power Apps. Now, when embedding a Power App in Teams, when you use the Power Apps application or the Power Apps tab application inside your team, you can provide or you select the Power App, and by default, it will add 11 properties to the query string. So by default, it will add these 11 properties to the query string and fill it in with all the information associated with that Teams context. So then you can use the param function to read out the query string parameters and use it inside of your Teams or inside of your Power App. While we're here, I want to show you how this works as well. So if you open up the Power Apps application inside Teams, it shows you a list of all, well, it shows you some context information, and then it shows you a list of all the recent applications that you have created. Now, if you want to create an application, you can either use this button or this button. They'll both do the same, and a pop-up will appear, and you have to select a theme where you will add your app to. So if you add the label or want to add the app to this specific theme, you just select the theme, you do create, and it will create the application for you. Now, if this theme, well, this one already has a Project Oakdale environment attached, if it doesn't have a Project Oakdale environment attached, it will create one at that moment in time, and things will take a lot longer before you will get into your application itself, because it has to create that CDS Lite, that Project Oakdale environment in the backend. You provide an application name, Teams Fast Demo. Let's fix the typo and save. And you will see here that this is the specific functionality that's new for a Project Oakdale Power App, is you get the ability to interact with tables inside your CDS environment, inside of your Project Oakdale environment. So this is a new experience. For example, contact, because that's what it suggests. You create a table, and this is where you create your data types. You have one column, you say we already have a name, let's also do email address, and select the type of email address, create. And then you can start putting in information or data inside the teams, inside of this table inside Project Oakdale environment. This is a custom view over CDS. So where you would normally go to make.powerapps.com to interact with your CDS data, you can do it right inside Project Oakdale inside Microsoft Teams client. Once that's available, you have it available as a data source, and it will populate the existing screens that are generated for you. The same goes for Power Virtual Agents. It's also an application. If you start now, you select once again in which theme your bot will be made available, and then you start building your team, and then when it's finished, you publish it to that team and can be used in there. Now, when you do custom development on Microsoft Teams, you extend certain parts of the Microsoft Teams application. First thing that we want to look at is when you extend conversations. Extending conversations happens, first of all, by conversational bots. So you create a bot inside Teams, so your users can interact with it, ask it questions, the bot will return with a couple of answers. And when we look at bots in a personal and group chat, you can use custom development and Power Virtual Agents to build this type of bot. But you cannot use Project Oakdale to build a bot that runs in a personal or in a group chat. And that's because, remember, a Power Virtual Agents bot or a Power Apps for Project Oakdale is associated to a specific team. It's not associated to a personal or group chat. It can only be associated to a team's team. So therefore, you cannot use Project Oakdale to build a bot for Power Virtual Agents. Now, in a specific team, you can use custom development and Power Virtual Agents, of course, but you can also use Project Oakdale. Like I said, it's available in a team, so you can associate or create a new Power Virtual Agents bot and make it available inside this specific team. Second thing are action-based messaging extensions. For those of you that do not know what are action-based messaging extensions, those are actions that can be triggered from when you type a message, so the compose message area. It's a little icon in there, like the YouTube icon, etc., etc. All of those applications that are available in there. The same goes for a command box. So the command box is on top of your Teams client, where you search. You can trigger an action-based messaging extension from the command box, but also from a specific message. Now, how can we build this? Of course, with custom development, but we cannot build this by using Project Oakdale. Project Oakdale does not extend the command box or the compose message area, or can be used for action-based messaging extensions, because they're not associated to a specific team. Now, you can use Power Automate for some sort of action-based messaging extension, and that's when you use the for a selected message trigger inside Power Automate, and it can only be used for an action-based messaging extension on messages. If you use for a selected message as a trigger, it will show up in the overflow menu on a specific message. It will pop up some information using adaptive cards, so it can request additional information from the triggering user, and then it just triggers the Power Automate flow and does whatever you configured it to do. But like I said, it's just limited to only messages and only Power Automate. Second type of messaging extensions are the search-based messaging extensions. They can be triggered from the compose message area in the command box, but they cannot be triggered from messages itself. So this is where, for example, you've got YouTube on the screen where you type or composing a message in the message area, and you want to include a YouTube video. So you use this application to search YouTube and embed a small preview card inside of your message. Now, to build this, you can only build this with custom development. There is nothing in Project Oakdale or the Power Platform that currently allows embedding, for example, a Power App inside or as a search-based messaging extension. Second type of extensions are when you're extending canvases. So when you use almost the full screen of your Teams client to create nice-looking interactive dashboards or applications. First one I want to touch on are the channel tabs. They're supported by custom development, by Project Oakdale, and by Power Apps. So you can use Project Oakdale, but also Power Apps to create a Power App application that can be embedded or shown as a Teams tab on top of the screen. So with Project Oakdale, this application is already available inside your specific team. Now with Power Apps, you use a Power Apps application and you select an existing Power Apps from your environment and you embed it as a full screen application inside your Teams tab. The same technology is used to put tabs as personal applications. And this is when the application runs in the context of the user. So it shows information, or is supposed to show information that is relevant for the specific logged in user. And the application is run from the left rail, the app rail, so you can pin it there as well. And you can create personal apps with custom development and with Power Apps. So you can create a Power App in make.powerapp.com and embed it as a personal application inside Microsoft Teams. You cannot use Project Oakdale for this. Same reason, Project Oakdale application has to be attached to a specific team. So there is no team for one user, so you cannot put a personal application or build a personal application using Project Oakdale. And then there's the ability to extend meetings. Like I said, this is brand new. It has been announced, and I'm not sure if we can already start trying it out. But when you extend meetings, you can have information in three places. So you can have a tab in the meeting creation screen or in the post-meeting screen. You can have an in-meeting tab and also an in-meeting notification. We know for sure that this will be supported by custom development and that the pre and the post-meeting tabs are using the same functionality or the same underlying framework that's used by a Teams tab. So probably we can use Power Apps to embed, or we can embed Power Apps as a pre and post meeting tab as well. But that's an assumption. I do not know that. And as we all know, assumptions are the mother of all ups. So be careful with it, with this, because nothing is known at the moment, whether or not you can embed a Power Apps in the pre and the post meeting tab. As an in-meeting tab and in-meeting notification, this will probably be limited at release to custom development. I do not see how Project Oakdale or Power Apps could be used to do anything like this. And then there's the special scenario of Project Oakdale Power Apps in the pre and the post meeting tab. Will it be supported, yes or no? There's nothing known there. Creating a meeting is not an action that's specific to a team. So it looks like if you look at the possibilities and everything else for Project Oakdale, that those applications will not be made available in the pre and the post meeting tab. But maybe exceptions occur when you schedule a channel meeting, because a channel meeting is associated to a specific team. So maybe you could use the Project Oakdale applications for channel meetings. I'm not sure there. We'll have to see in the future how all of this turns out. Both Project Oakdale and meeting extensibility are just recently announced, so things might change in the near future a lot. And then the last thing I want to cover is licensing. So licensing for custom development, it's included. The only additional cost that you might get is your hosting cost. If you use Azure resources or Amazon AWS resources, you will probably have to pay for those to run your Teams application. Project Oakdale, I stick to the part of most Microsoft Teams licenses statement that Microsoft seems to use everywhere. There is a docs article that describes specifically which Office 365 and Microsoft 365 licenses include Project Oakdale support. And I think I'll link to it on the resources slide. And then there's the embedded Power Apps licensing, which I'm not touching today because it's very complex. Look, a great deep dive session by Ryan Cunningham and hosted by Louise Vrees and Elio Struijf. And some recap has been posted on Twitter, so I urge you to check that out if you want to understand Power Apps licensing. I still don't after yesterday, but those slides are a good introduction into Power Apps licensing. Besides capabilities, there are a lot of other things you have to consider when you make a choice when to use what for your custom Teams development in the future. First of all, there's team skills. If you only have a team of makers that have no pro dev experience, well, then it's an easy one. You just go with Project Oakdale or Power Apps. You don't try and start the full-blown development unless your team wants to skill up, which is a possibility. Other things, like all projects, are timing, budget, and scope. What do you need to do? How much money can we spend? And what is the timing for this to be released? And timing, when it has to be very fast and quickly done, Power Automate, Power Apps are a lot faster to get stuff done than custom development, but there are other downsides to choosing Power Apps or Power Automate. Then you have to consider who's the audience for your application. Some of your audience, some of your end users might prefer Power Apps over custom development because it's familiar and it provides a familiar look and feel. Same goes for application owner. who will own and maintain this application after it has been built? Will it be IT, or will it be the business or a business user? That might also impact whatever option you choose for a custom Teams development. Data location. If you have external data sources that you want to interact with and they require a premium connector, for example, in Power Apps, you might have to look at other extensibility options because you cannot access external data or premium connectors inside of Power Automate or Power App inside Project Oakdale. And reusability, because an application in Project Oakdale is attached to a specific team, it's not easy to move it from that specific team to another team and run it in multiple places. So given all of this information, when do you use what? Luckily, we've got a good answer there as a consultant. We just say it depends and we investigate all of the possibilities for that specific use case. But I hope that I at least provided all of the that you need to make a good informed decision when you have to do your next Microsoft Teams development experience or customization. So that brings me to the end of this presentation. There's a list of resources at the end. I will share, the slides will be shared so you don't have to copy paste all of this, these links. With that, I want to thank you for joining. If you have questions, I think there's a little bit of time left to ask them right now. And otherwise, you can reach out to me on Twitter or on my blog, and I will try to get them answered. Don't forget, I do a sticker giveaway. So I'll be giving away some stickers. Please go to that link on the slide. And I'm not sure if I can copy paste it. I'll post it in the chat. So go there, fill in the questions, and have a chance at receiving some awesome stickers from Print Your Own Device. I took some that are relevant to this presentation already by choosing licensing killer user adoption. And I hate stickers because I have no stickers on my laptop, and it seems fitting. While everybody else in the whole world puts stickers on their laptop, I have a clean and empty laptop. And I like it that way. And then there's also the Teams Fest feedback link. So please go there. It's very important both for the Teams Fest organizers to get your feedback, but as well for me to get feedback for the specific session. So please go there and rate this session and the event itself. There will be more sessions until 7 Central European Time tonight, and use the Teams Fest hashtag on Twitter to show your support. So with that, thank you very much. If there are any questions, please put them in the chat. I will be sticking around for a couple of minutes to answer them.